So I want you to imagine for a second that you were sitting on this tiny plastic stool.
Right. Just right on the sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly. On a bustling sidewalk in Hanoi.
Mm.
And it's dawn. The air is, well, it's surprisingly cool. And the streets are just sort of starting to hum with that low rumble of motorbikes. And right in front of you, a vendor places this steaming, incredibly fragrant bowl on a low metal table.
It's such a great image. I mean, it really grounds you.
It does. And to the untrained eye, it looks like a really quick, simple breakfast, like just some noodles, broth, a bit of meat. But what you're actually staring at is, it's an edible history lesson. It is literally the very soul of a nation, distilled into this single aromatic liquid.
Yeah, and that perfectly captures what we're exploring today, because when we talk about this specific dish, we are never just talking about a bowl of soup.
Exactly. So today's deep dive is for you, the listener, who maybe wants a shortcut to being well-informed, or, maybe you just want to travel the world without ever actually leaving your seat.
Which is the best way to travel, honestly.
Right? Much cheaper. We are pulling from this whole stack of really incredible cultural, geographical, and culinary sources to explore the profound significance of Vietnam's most iconic dish.
Mm.
We are talking about pho. Okay, let's unpack this. Because on the surface, pho looks deceptively simple, right?
Oh, totally. Just liquid and noodles.
Right. You've got your broth, your noodles, your toppings. But as we, dig into the research here, it becomes super clear that this bowl is actually a highly complex masterclass in history, geography, and sensory design.
It really is. And to really grasp what pho means to the country of Vietnam as a whole, we kind of have to start by deconstructing the physical bowl itself. Because what's fascinating here is how the source describes this as an architecture.
An architecture, I like that.
Right, because it's not just a bunch of ingredients haphazardly thrown together in a pot to get warm. It is meticulously built from the ground up.
The architecture of flavor. And, I mean, every great building needs a rock-solid foundation, right?
Right.
Without it, the whole thing just totally collapses. And here, in this bowl, that foundation is the broth. The sources literally refer to it as the soul of the dish.
Yeah, the soul. And what is truly amazing about this broth is that it isn't just cooked. It is practically engineered over time. We are talking about patience as a primary active ingredient here.
Because of the simmer time.
Exactly. Beef or chicken bones are simmered for up to 12 hours.
Wait, 12 hours? Like half a day just for the liquid base? That is a massive investment of time for something that, people basically slurp down in 15 minutes.
Yeah, but it's not just leaving a pot on the stove and walking away. It's 12 hours of constant, careful attention. The chef has to constantly skim the surface.
To get the impurities out, right.
Skimming away the impurities, ensuring the liquid stays incredibly clear. And during that whole time, it's infused with charred ginger and onions.
Oh, the char...
Yes, the charring is crucial. It brings this deep, smoky complexity to it. And then you introduce this really warm bouquet of spices. So, star anise, cinnamon, cloves, cardamom.
It sounds amazing.
It really does. But the ultimate goal here is to create a liquid that perfectly balances the ancient concept of yin and yang.
Okay, so I've heard that phrase thrown around a lot, right? Usually on spa menus or in yoga classes.
Mm-hmm.
But what does yin and yang actually mean mechanically when we were talking about a literal bowl of soup?
Well, it's a really foundational concept in traditional Eastern medicine and, culinary philosophy too. Ingredients aren't just judged by what they taste like. They have specific energetic properties. So yang elements are considered warming to the human body.
Warming, okay.
Like spices.
Exactly. Think about the heavy, rich beef bones. Think about that charred ginger, the cinnamon, the star anise we just mentioned. These ingredients, they generate internal heat. They stimulate circulation.
So it's not just about the physical temperature of the boiling water. It's about how those specific ingredients, biologically interact with your metabolism. You nailed it. But the thing is, if a dish only has yang elements, it becomes too heavy. It's too aggressive, It throws the body out of equilibrium. So you need the yin to balance it out.
The cooling elements.
Right. The massive volume of water used to create the broth itself is yin.
Right.
The flat rice noodles, which we'll get to, are cooling. And eventually things like a squeeze of fresh lime, crisp bean sprouts, or, fresh herbs, those provide a really bright, cooling counterbalance. So that 12 hours of simmering, it's this slow, deliberate process of fusing these warming and cooling energies together until they hit this exact perfect harmony.
Wow. So the diners essentially drinking a bowl of thermodynamic balance.
Exactly.
It manages to be remarkably clean on the palate,
Yeah.
yet deeply, profoundly savory. But, I mean, here's the thing about foundations, right?
Mhm.
When you walk past a beautiful house, you don't actually see the concrete that's buried deep in the dirt.
Right. It's totally hidden.
Yeah, so when a diner gets that bowl of pho, they just see this clear, beautiful liquid. Unless you know the culinary science behind it, you are completely blind to the half day of painstaking labor, the charring, the skimming, the energy balancing. It just looks so effortless.
Well, the diner is meant to experience the harmony of the result, right? Not the struggle of the labor. But, I mean, that clear, complex broth is totally useless without a vehicle to carry it to your palate.
Needs a body.
Exactly. It needs a physical structure,
Right.
which brings us to the body of the dish, the noodles.
The banfei. And the sources we're looking at are incredibly strict about this rule. They must be fresh, like they're described as these flat, velvety rice noodles. But why does the shape and the freshness actually matter that much? If I just, grab a box of dried round rice vermicelli from the grocery store, am I ruining the architecture?
I mean, you are certainly compromising it. The texture and the shape of the banfo are basically everything. A flat, fresh noodle acts as this porous canvas. It's delicate enough to actively absorb that rich 12-hour yin and yang broth. It literally pulls the flavor into its core.
Oh, so it's not just sitting in the water, it's becoming part of it.
Right. But because it's fresh and properly prepared, it simultaneously maintains a very tender, distinct bite. It doesn't just dissolve into mush.
So it doesn't make the broth all cloudy.
Exactly. It holds the soul of the soup together while physically carrying it to your taste buds.
Okay, so we have the invisible soul of the broth, and we have the physical body, the noodles. Now we need the toppings, which I guess give the bowl its specific character. So we have gubo, right, the beef version.
Right.
And this can range from like incredibly tender, slow-cooked brisket to rare ribeye that is sliced so thin and it's almost translucent. Or you have fuga, which is the shredded chicken option. And either way, the meat is always sliced for absolute melt-in-the-mouth perfection. But, okay, let me push back on this for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If that 12-hour painstakingly balanced broth is the definitive soul of the dish, are these diverse meat toppings just like a protein delivery system? Or do they actually fundamentally alter the character, like the source suggests?
Oh, they fundamentally alter the chemical makeup of the bowl, which is why the character of the dish changes completely depending on what you order. So think of the 12-hour broth as your baseline identity, right? Your genetic code.
Okay.
The meat is the lived experience that shapes what the bowl becomes in its final moments. Take that rare ribeye, for example. The meat is served raw, right on top of the noodles, and the moment the chef pours the boiling broth over it, that raw beef sears instantly.
So the cooking process is actually finishing right there in the bowl in real time.
Exactly. And as it sears, that beef releases a very specific type of fat, myoglobin, and juices directly into the broth. It physically changes the chemical structure and the mouthfeel of the soup right in front of you. It makes it instantly richer and heavier. Whereas the shredded chicken, on the other hand, it doesn't release heavy fats in the same way. It keeps the flavor profile much lighter, cleaner, and more delicate.
So the bowl is literally a living thing. The character shifts dramatically based on the protein. But, what I find even more fascinating in our research is that it's not just the choice of meat that shifts the character of the dish. It is the literal earth you are standing on.
Yes, because if we connect this to the bigger picture, once you understand how the bowl is built, the conversation naturally shifts to how it travels. As you move across the map of Vietnam, the soul of the dish physically adapts to its surroundings. Pho is essentially an edible map.
Edible map. I love that. And we see two very distinct regional identities here, don't we? We have northern pho, known as phu bike, and southern pho, pho nam. Let's start up in the north, in Hanoi, where the dish was originally born. The whole culinary philosophy up there is described as minimalist, elegant, traditional.
Yeah, northern pho is a pure reflection of its environment and its history. The broth in the north is incredibly clear, very savory, and intensely fragrant. And it demands to be appreciated strictly on its own merits.
So no hiding it.
None. Because of that, the garnishes are incredibly restrained. You might get a scatter of green onions, some cilantro, and maybe a splash of lime or rice vinegar, but nothing more.
It sounds to me like an acoustic solo. Like in northern pho, because it's so minimalist, you can hear every single string being plucked. You can actually taste the star anise. You can pick out the charred ginger. Every single spice in that 12-hour broth has literally nowhere to hide. It is completely exposed to the diner.
That's a great way to put it. The elegance is in its vulnerability. But we have to ask why it developed that way, right? And it really comes down to geography and history. Hanoi has distinct seasons. It gets genuinely cold in the winter.
Right, which naturally pushes a culture toward warm, deeply savory, comforting broths.
Exactly. But historically, the North has also experienced periods of severe economic austerity and strict rationing.
So you couldn't rely on a massive, endless abundance of extra ingredients. You kind of just had to take a few core bones, a few spices, some noodles, and treat them with absolute reverence to just make them shine.
You had to. The elegance of Northern pho was basically forged by constraint. It's about extracting the absolute maximum potential out of the absolute minimum number of ingredients. But then, as you travel south down the country to places like Ho Chi Minh City,
Everything completely flips.
it really does.
Southern pho nam, is an entirely different beast. It is vibrant, it's
Mhm.
loud, and it is highly customizable.
Because the environment is completely different. The South is tropical, it's lush, it's located near the incredibly fertile Mekong Delta, which is historically the agricultural powerhouse of the country. They've just historically been more exposed to international trade routes and agricultural abundance.
So the philosophy of food down there isn't shaped by constraint at all. It's shaped by this immense, vibrant abundance.
Yeah.
And you can see that instantly in how it's served. The broth itself changes, right? It becomes sweeter, richer, bolder in taste. And the garnishes are just outrageous compared to the North. Like, you are handed these massive plates of Thai basil, cilantro, rice patty herb, bean sprouts. Plus, they bring in these heavy-hitting condiments right to the table, like dark, sweet hoisin sauce and fiery chili paste.
It's a whole production.
It is. It is literally like going from that delicate acoustic solo to a massive chaotic jazz band where the diner gets to jump up on stage and like remix the instruments themselves.
Yeah, it's a completely interactive, highly personalized experience.
But wait, I'm genuinely confused here for a second. We just spent all this time praising this delicate 12-hour yin and yang broth that took half a day to balance perfectly. If Southern pho actively encourages you to squirt heavy, dark hoisin sauce and intense chili paste right into the bowl, doesn't that just completely obliterate all that painstaking work the chef just did? I mean, why spend half a day simmering bones if you're just going to cover it up with bottled sauce?
It's a totally valid concern, and it actually highlights a major misunderstanding people often have about Southern pho. In the North, as you noted, the broth is the acoustic solo. It cannot and it should not be masked. But the Southern broth is purposefully engineered by the chef to be sweeter and bolder, specifically so it can stand up to those heavy additions.
Oh, I see. So it's not a delicate broth being ruined. It's a robust broth, basically inviting a challenge.
Precisely. It is engaging in a dialogue, not being masked by it. The intense sweetness of the hoisin and that sharp, bright heat of the chili, they're meant to bounce off that richer Southern broth. It creates this totally new, dynamic harmony that you just wouldn't be able to achieve with the more delicate Northern style. The architecture of the house actually changes to support a heavier, more complex roof, so to speak.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So one single dish basically manages to encapsulate two entirely different regional histories, one rooted in elegant historical restraint and the other rooted in bold tropical abundance.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to the final and perhaps most magical element of pho. This raises an important question, right? We've talked about how it's built, we've talked about how it evolves geographically, but none of that matters until the diner actually sits down to eat it.
Right.
And eating pho is emphatically not a passive event. It is a highly specific, shared sensory ritual, food transitioning into a cultural behavior.
Yeah, because if you were used to just, ordering pho for takeout, dumping the plastic quart container into a bowl, and eating it while scrolling on your phone on the couch, you were honestly missing out on half the intended experience. This is where food goes from being mere sustenance, just calories to keep you alive, into an actual cultural behavior.
Exactly. And step one of this ritual is what we can call the sensory start. So when that steaming bowl is placed down on the table in front of you, you do not just grab a spoon and start shoveling noodles into your mouth. You have to physically lean over the bowl. You purposefully breathe in the aromatic steam.
You're waking up your senses. You are priming your palate. Scientifically speaking, you are preparing your olfactory system and your brain for the complex layers of flavor that are about to arrive. You are intentionally slowing down time.
Okay, and then comes step two, which I love because it's all about respect. It's about honoring the chef's labor. Before you add a single drop of lime, before you toss in a single basil leaf or squirt any sauce, you have to taste the pure broth from your spoon. Just one pure sip to acknowledge those 12 hours of dedication we talked about earlier.
It's a moment of profound culinary reverence. You are acknowledging the history and the labor in the bowl before you impose your own present desires onto it.
Then and only then do we move to the customization phase, gently adding the ingredients. And there is a very specific mechanical detail for how they do this in the South with that massive plate of herbs. You don't just drop the whole leaves into the soup, you physically tear the leaves apart with your fingers first.
And there is real science behind why you do that. Tearing the leaves actively ruptures the cell walls of the plant along its natural veins.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and this instantly releases the essential oils into the steam and the hot broth. It completely changes the aromatic profile of the air right above the bowl. If you just drop a whole leaf in, those oils stay locked inside. By tearing them, you are extracting these volatile flavor compounds that interact with the heat of the soup.
So you've seasoned the air, you've seasoned the broth, and now you actually have to get the food to your mouth.
Yeah.
Which requires a technique that the source beautifully describes as the chopstick spoon symphony, which honestly sounds incredibly stressful if you're wearing a white shirt.
Oh, it requires serious coordination.
Yeah. You lift the velvety noodles with the chopsticks in your dominant hand.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, you cradle those noodles into the soup spoon held in your other hand. Then you add a piece of that melt-in-your-mouth meat, a little of the broth, maybe a piece of chili, and you construct the perfect, harmonious bite right there on the spoon before eating it.
Think about how different that is from traditional Western fine dining. In a classical French restaurant, for example, you're generally presented with a finished, plated masterpiece. The chef's vision is absolute, and you're basically just there to passively consume it exactly as they designed it.
Right. But this is like conducting a tiny orchestra right at the table. You're managing the percussion of the crunching bean sprouts, the brass section of the chili sauce, and the string section of the noodles. But honestly, when you look at it this way, it almost sounds like the chef only does half the work.
How do you mean?
Well, the chef builds this incredible 12-hour foundation, right? But the diner is actually required to physically finish the dish by tearing the leaves, rupturing the cell walls, mixing the sauces, and engineering every single perfect bite. Is pho the ultimate interactive meal?
I would argue that it absolutely is. The chef provides a masterpiece of a canvas, but the final brushstrokes are entirely yours. You are a true co-creator of your own meal.
Yeah.
And because of that dynamic, no two bowls of pho are ever eaten the exact same way, even if they're poured from the exact same pot at the exact same time.
Which makes the next rule of the ritual so fun, because it breaks all the rules we were taught as kids. Slurping is highly encouraged.
Yes. Which is so funny because in many Western cultures, slurping your soup is considered rude or, unrefined. But here, slurping your noodles serves two massive purposes.
Okay, I assume one is just trying not to burn your mouth.
Well, that is definitely part of it, but practically, it aerates the broth as you pull it into your mouth. Much like slurping wine at a professional tasting, pulling air in volatilizes the aromatic compounds in the back of your throat. It's a process called retronasal olfaction.
Okay.
It literally makes the soup taste better and feel more expansive across your palate.
That's wild. And the second purpose?
Culturally, it acts as a direct, audible compliment to the chef. It signals that the soup is so incredibly delicious you cannot possibly wait for it to cool down to a polite temperature. It is the ultimate loud sign of respect.
I love that. And what really strikes me, as we look at this whole sensory interactive symphony, is the social context of it all. This ritual crosses every social and economic boundary imaginable. You will find people enjoying pho sitting on tiny plastic stools on bustling Hanoi sidewalks at dawn, and you'll find it being served in upscale Saigon restaurants at midnight. A CEO in a tailored suit and a street sweeper ending their shift can literally be sitting shoulder to shoulder on those same plastic stools.
It is the great social equalizer because when you are leaning over that steaming bowl, executing that chopstick spoon symphony, you are participating in the exact same cultural heartbeat as the person sitting right next to you. It totally transcends class, profession, and background.
So what does this all actually mean for us? What have we really learned from unpacking this iconic dish today?
We've learned that pho is the very rhythm of Vietnamese life. It is an architectural marvel, right? A delicate thermodynamic balance of yin and yang built on the hidden, invisible foundation of a 12-hour broth.
We've traced its path as a living geographical map, shifting from the elegant, historical constraint of the north to the vibrant, tropical abundance of the south. And we've learned how it demands a multi-sensory ritual, requiring the diner to basically step up to the plate, rupture the cell walls of the herbs, and actively co-create the final meal.
You really haven't truly experienced the essence of Vietnam until you have sat down, watched those fresh green herbs slowly wilt into the steaming aromatic broth, and taken that life-affirming first sip. The table is always waiting for you.
Absolutely. But before we let you go, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to sort of mull over on your own time. We spent a lot of time talking about how So naturally adapts and changes to reflect its geography, right? It acts as this intrinsically adaptable edible map, becoming bolder and sweeter as it moves south to reflect the fertile climate and the agricultural abundance of that specific region. Well, what happens as pho travels the globe?
Oh, that is a truly fascinating thing to ponder, because migration changes food just as much as climate does.
Exactly. Does the soul of the bowl naturally shift to reflect the local ingredients of whatever new country it lands in? Like, if you order a bowl in Paris or Texas or Tokyo, does it quietly mutate to tell a new story of that specific geography? Or does taking it too far from its roots risk breaking that delicate 12-hour yin and yang balance we talked about? Next time you're walking around your own neighborhood, look closely at the global foods available to you. Wonder about how they've quietly mutated right under your nose to tell a totally new story of geography and human migration. And remember that tiny plastic stool on the mist-covered sidewalk in Hanoi at dawn? The soup in the bowl might just be a mirror reflecting the world around it.